At the minimum level, a value chain consists of a supplier, consists of component suppliers, sub-assemblies, final assembly, manufacturing, distributors, retailers, wholesalers, and ultimately could be the end consumers. And this whole chain of network that are engaged in the production of products and services. That's the basic value chain. But now, increasingly, value chain could include the government because they could affect and they could limit, they could restrict, or they could support your whole delivery of products and services. It could include even NGOs because they are also a stakeholder. They could also include logistics providers, third-party providers. So I call that the complete value chain or the ecosystem. So today, very few companies are completely vertically integrated, meaning that you make everything. You make all the components yourself, you make all the sub-assemblies yourself, and you distribute yourself. Everyone depends on somebody else. So you depend on your suppliers, you depend on your outlet, you depend on your distributor, you depend on some third party as a channel. And if you're not able to integrate that value chain well, synchronize, then you could be very efficient, you could be very successful, but if your value chain partners cannot fulfill their job, your products may not be successful, or your services cannot reach to the customers in your intended fashion and expectation. So we're all interdependent. And in order for a company to be successful, the whole value chain has to be successful. Most of the entrepreneurs in the developing economies recognize that they have huge constraints because the government may not be supportive, their roads are bad, the infrastructures are not dependable, their suppliers are not on time. So they all recognize these challenges. So what I would tell these entrepreneurs is that you can overcome these. These barriers are not insurmountable. And you overcome it by sometimes redefining what your roles are, creating the right information linkages, creating the right relationships, sharing, collaborating, and those challenges and constraints can be overcome. And once they're overcome, there could be new business models and new products and services that you have not even thought of today. And so that's why my simple advice is challenges are great, but they can be overcome by the right innovations and approaches. Innovations that could require you to rethink the way you deliver your products, rethink about the incentives that you give the suppliers. So sometimes those barriers are because the suppliers did not trust you, or because the suppliers did not have the right information, or because the suppliers have their own constraints. And so helping them, by collaborating with them, you overcome their barriers, which in turn unblock your own bottleneck. So I would say that by going out, having the right information shared, having the right collaborations in place, having the right incentives in place can go a long way. When we went to Ghana, when we went to these developing economies, oftentimes the entrepreneurs, because of their experience and because of the limitations that they have lived with all their lives, they only think of small markets. They only think of, okay, what can I do to create this service so that I can serve my village, so that I can serve my town, my own region, my own geography. But in fact, if they understand the complete value chain well, they can export. They can serve other countries. They can expand what they're doing. I'll give you an example of the farmers that I work with in Ghana. These are shea butter garners, farmers, the women farmers. So they grow shea butter, which are nuts. But it turns out that the biggest value add is if they can also learn how to process the nuts so that they become ingredients for cosmetic companies. And that is a much higher value add than just purely growing the nuts, using the nuts for food consumption, their own people consuming the nuts. And so this is really about a way of understanding what role you play in the big value chain And can you add more value by doing more than what you're doing today and by expanding the geographic span that you can cover? Such innovations are not just for the sake of helping the developed economies so that they would create values for themselves and make people live better there. I would have to say that if you are a multinational today, large corporations, we also, our own students, MBA students, our own alumni, we also better understand those economies better. We also better learn how to leverage the entrepreneurial power of those economies better. We also need to leverage the innovations that could come from so-called bottom of the pyramid, because those innovations can also be incorporated into these, even if you're a big corporation, because big corporations oftentimes have to expand, and you may one day go to those economies. Those economies could be your market. This is like about 30 years ago, 25 years ago, people would think of China as a developing economy, and you would only use China as a place where you can have cheap labor source to build your products, to manufacture your products. But today, China is no longer a developing economy, even though pockets of China are still developing. But China is a market. China is a big market. China is a source of innovation. Same thing could happen in different parts of Africa, in different parts of Southeast Asia, in different parts of South America. So I would say that while we go out there with the intent to help the entrepreneurs in the region, but I think regardless of whether you are looking at the interest of big corporations in developed economies, this kind of value chain innovations are crucial for the overall economic development of everyone.